in the next proceeding.
Distinguished citizens, the People's Court is now in session. Distinguished citizens, the People's Court is so glad that the essence of democracy and participation of the people is yielding fruit. We thank the officers and men in the Nigerian police force for being able to resolve one of those issues of a missing child that we have brought to you. And the first segment of this program was donated to that the people will know that the police is working. I think we believe that the police is our friend and we are part of the police. What we want to use this opportunity is to tell the people that we have to take back our community and participate. The police is part of our community and we have to also assist them to do the work. And this singular issue has shown that the Nigerian police is still the best institution to support democracy. I congratulate them and thank the Commissioner of Police for working diligently. When we brought them to this court, they did not say, what is People's Court? We are Nigerian police force, we go and arrest them. They diligently tried to invite OKOYE, even though he was so distressed and behaving somehow in the general parlance, they would say he was irrational. But you can understand the trauma and what the pressure he has gone through. I thank the police for accommodating him. Distinguished citizens, the focus of this episode of the People's Court is captured from the decision of the Supreme Court of Nigeria in the case of Lasisi against the state. This decision of the Supreme Court of Nigeria centered on a decision that was reported in 2013, Volume 12, Nigeria Weekly Law Report, Part 1367, at page 133. We decided to bring to your notice the pronouncement of the Apex Court by the dictum of our erudite Justice Oguta, JSC. What he said in that case borders on issue of loss of a human life, and this is the pronouncement of his lordship, and I quote: "It must be borne in mind that a human life was terminated in a most horrible manner. Justice, for which the innocent blood of the victim cries, stands on a tripod: justice for the appellant on trial, justice for the victim who had been deprived of his life, and justice for the society horrified at the act of the mother. There can be no justice unless the appellant is tried for the murder with which he is charged." Unquote. Distinguished citizens, this is the erudite pronouncement of Honorable Justice Nguta in deciding a case in the matter between the state and Lasisi, an issue of where somebody was murdered and the right of the person who committed the murder to be given fair trial before decision will be made. And that will bring us to the platform of the public petition today. The platform of the public petition, which is sponsored by Movers Nigeria, is an issue that borders on human rights in Nigeria. And this question is thus: considering that no state of emergency was declared in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, do you support investigation and trial in a court of law of the officers of the State Security Services, SSS, whose operation to dislodge alleged terrorist Boko Haram led to the death of 9 citizens in Ao area in Abuja, and reparation paid to the families by the federal government of Nigeria? I take this question again. Considering that no state of emergency was declared in the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja, do you as citizens support investigation and trial in a court of law of the officers of the State Security Services, SSS, whose operation to dislodge alleged terrorists Boko Haram led to the death of 9 citizens in Akpo area in Abuja, and reparation paid to the families by the federal government. Distinguished citizens, this is the question on the public table today. But before I do that, I will introduce the forum judge in this episode to make his remark before we go to the public petition. The justice in this matter is that we still have to remember that even the man who we accuse of murder has a right to come and defend himself. The forum advocate is now bringing in the forum judge this morning. The forum judge this morning is Engineer Nanyel Onyepuluje. He is not a lawyer. Mr. Nanyel, please, could you render your opening statement, sir?
Thank you, Chief Ifan Chukwu. My opening remarks are based on impunity, justice, and democracy. I recall that my first and last opportunity as a foreign judge on these people's court program was on the 27th July 2003. I thank the initiator of the Movers Nigeria, Chief Ifan Chukwu, who is also the promoter of People's Court, for another opportunity today, being the 28th September 2013, to preside as the foreign judge. The People's Court is a contribution of Chief Ifan Chukwu to justice and democracy. I commend his effort and sacrifice, and hope that many more Nigerians will not only have the will, but also the logistics to make similar or other positive contributions to eradicate impunity and promote justice and democracy in Nigeria. It takes enormous and individual effort to truly express and partake of the essence of freedom, justice, and democracy. Most Nigerians of middle age who have lived in Nigeria since birth have lived much of their lives under military dictatorship, and therefore freedom, justice, and democracy are rare to them. People are not born knowing what these concepts are, and are consequently destitute of the concepts if they have lived their lives in countries where such concepts are not a way of life. The way of life in Nigeria appears to have been impunity nurtured by corruption, which I understand a Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, Justice Ibrahim Auta, had identified as the single most important factor delaying criminal justice administration in the country. According to Wikipedia, democracy focuses on opportunities for the people to control their leaders and to oust them without the need for a revolution. It encompasses social, economic, and cultural conditions that enable the free and equal practice of political self-determination. In a democracy, justice is overwhelmingly important. Justice is a concept of moral rightness based on ethics, rationality, law, natural law, religion, equity or fairness, as well as the administration of the law, taking into account the inalienable and inborn rights of all human beings and citizens, the right of all people and individuals to equal protection before the law of their civil rights, without discrimination on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, color, ethnicity, religion, disability, age, or other characteristics, and is further regarded as being inclusive of social justice. These are very noble concepts, which are not attainable as long as inept and or corrupt persons occupy positions of authority and decide our fate. In the amended set of the principles for the protection and promotion of human rights through action to combat impunity, submitted to the United Nations Commission on Human Rights on 8 February 2005, impunity is defined as a failure by the states to meet their obligations to investigate violations, to take appropriate measures in respect of the perpetrators, particularly in the area of justice, by ensuring that those suspected of criminal responsibility are prosecuted, tried, and duly punished, to provide victims with effective remedies, and to ensure that they receive reparations for injuries suffered, to ensure the inalienable right to know the truth about violations, and to take other necessary steps to prevent a recurrence of violations. Impunity is especially common in countries that lack a tradition of the rule of law, suffer from corruption, or that have entrenched systems of patronage, or where the judiciary is weak, or members of the security forces are protected by special jurisdictions or immunities. Freedom of speech and association, justice and enforcement of the law are the most essential elements in the promotion of the essence of democracy. I think that with freedom of speech and association taken for granted, though very rare in most developing countries, the public institutions that are most privileged by the occupations of their agents to promote the survival and growth of democracy in Nigeria are the judiciary and the law enforcement agencies, particularly the Nigerian police. Unfortunately, however, the said institutions are plagued by the same illnesses of other ailing institutions. What a pity. It is indeed very sad, very, very sad that in Nigeria, blessed with so much milk and honey, the citizens are still occupied with procurement of daily bread. How can a goat die of hunger in a barn full of yams? Thank you very much.
Distinguished Forum Judge, I thank you for your erudite presentation. Distinguished citizens, I will now call upon the presenter to prepare the community citizens for participation in the petition. The first thing I want to do is that the forum judge will give his decision on the public petition, so that when the jury comes in, they will deal with the issue and decisively deliver the judgment. Forum judge, sir, what is your decision on the public petition about the killing in Abuja?
The killing at Abu in Abuja was in fact most unfortunate, and I think that government is duty bound to protect the lives of all Nigeria's residents, and therefore have no authority to take same lives except as provided in law. I support investigation and trial in a court of law of agents of government implicated in the said murder of Nigerians at Abu area in Abuja. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have no power to alter your decision, and that is the decree. I want to ask the presenter to please call in the jury so that they will deliberate on this issue and deliver their decree.
All right, it's 21 minutes past the hour of 10, and we are still in the People's Court. I will hand over to the initiator and mover of Movers Nigeria, Mr. Ifeanyi Okonkwo, for the next proceeding.
Distinguished citizens, we are now in trial court. The court is now in session. Citizens, the petition for trial today is the case between Mr. OBIORA Lawrence OKOYE, suing through his attorney OKAFOR CELESTINE UBAKA as the claimant against Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU, operating in the style and manner of Prince and Princesses Nursery and Primary School Abakpa as defendant. Citizens, the processes in this petition from the claimant, Mr. OBIORA Lawrence OKOYE, was served on Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU through our courier service sent to her and was received on Friday, 30th day of August 2013. The facts of this case is as follows. My name is OKAFOR CELESTINE UBAKA. I live at number 3 Abakpa Street, Ubene, Abakpa, Enugu. I am the lawful attorney appointed by Mr. OBIORA Lawrence OKOYE over a piece of land at number 1 Sept Street, Ubene, Abakpa, which was rented out to one Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU. My principal, Mr. OBIORA Lawrence OKOYE, leased his plot of land at number 1 Sept Street, Ubene, Abakpa, to me, Mr. OKAFOR CELESTINE UBAKA, as his lawful attorney on the 15th day of May 2012. Before I became the lawful attorney to OBIORA Lawrence OKOYE, he had rented the said property to one Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU. Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU is the owner of Prince and Princesses Nursery and Primary School, Abakpa. Whereas my principal, Mr. OBIORA Lawrence OKOYE, took me, his attorney, that is Mr. OKAFOR UBAKA, to the tenant, Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU, who owned and managed a nursery and primary school called Prince and Princesses Nursery School. She begged me, the attorney of Mr. OBIORA, to allow her to continue to use the land for 1 year to enable her get a new site for her school business. After much pleading by Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU, I, OKAFOR CELESTINE UBAKA, the attorney of Mr. Lawrence OKOYE, accepted to give her 1 year, which ended on 15th day of May 2013. To my greatest surprise, Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU, who begged for 1 year before me, and my principal, OBIORA Lawrence OKOYE, went to High Court Enugu before the end of the year against me instead of against my principal, Mr. OBIORA Lawrence OKOYE, asking the court to prevent me, Mr. OKAFOR CELESTINE UBAKA, from entering the land which I have leased to her until Mrs. Pauline is ready to leave the land. I was told that I cannot be sued because I am agent of Mr. OBIORA Lawrence OKOYE. I started making inquiries on the type of wickedness she exhibited, and I was now told by a reliable source that the Prince and Princesses Primary School, Nursery and Primary School, which is operated by Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU, is used for child trafficking unknown to parents who take their children there. The claimant wants the People's Court to give him the following reliefs. 1. I want Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU to vacate the land. I also want to use this opportunity to invite the authorities to investigate what is going on in this primary and nursery school operated by Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU for other businesses she is doing in the premises in disguise. Distinguished citizens, we sent this petition as the law requires to the defendant. The defendant, in the usual culture of Nigerians of impunity, collected this petition and decided there's nothing like People's Court. She doesn't need to answer anybody, that she knows what she's doing. And this is exactly why we have brought this case. We now call on the forum judge to give his verdict, having studied this case himself, before we now bring in the distinguished jury to render the binding judgment of this Honorable People's Court. Forum judge, sir.
Thank you, foreign advocate. The reliefs sought by the claimant 2 on relief number 1, which is I want Mrs. Pauline NNEKA CHUKWU to vacate the land. My judgment, or judgment of the foreign judge, The People's Court cannot adjudicate on this relief because the matter is sub judice, that is under judicial consideration, not yet decided, and for this reason not to be commented upon. On relief number 2, the claimant, armed with reliable source of information, should make a formal report to the police. Claimant may return to People's Court if the police fails to take action, but I hope the police will take action. Meanwhile, Movers Nigeria should also forward the claimant's petition to the police for action. Thank you.
Distinguished citizens, that is the judgment of our forum judge. I now call on the presenter to please bring in the distinguished jury.
Judgments and all the other things.
Distinguished citizens, we have now come to the end of the trial. I will now call on the forum judge to give the verdict of the people, one on the public petition, and secondly on the case that has just been tried. The forum judge will give us what the verdict of the jury. That is, the verdict of the jury is what will now help us to know what we have decided on the public petition and the case tried. Forum judge, sir.
Thank you, Chief CHUKWU. On the public, on the issue of public petition, the jurors, that is the public, that called in were 14 in number, and 10 of them support investigation and trial of the agents of government, and 4 of them were against.
So the final decision on that matter is give your verdict by the people.
Okay. Verdict by the people. Out of 14 persons that called in, 10 support investigation and trial of the agents of government if they were found to have...
And that is in line with your judgment.
Yes.
The case proper.
Now, on the case proper, 7 persons or members of the public called in, and out of that, 5 of them support investigation of the school with respect to child trafficking, and 2 did not support. Thank you.
Final judgment on the case trial.
Final judgment is in favor of investigation of the nursery and primary school and possible prosecution. Thank you.
And don't forget that this judgment cannot be altered. We have to upload it in the internet, and that is the judgment of the court. I will now call on Movers Nigeria to present the letters and email that has been sent to the People's Court before we now announce the winners of the radio in this closing episode of this edition, because the next edition that will start will be with some moderation, and we will tell you about that. So Movers Nigeria, please let us have the email and comments of the people.
The first one is from Obi in
We are going to do a special radio presentation to 2 distinguished citizens that have made effort to participate from outside the state. One is Pat from Imo State. You're a winner of a radio, digital radio, because you have been consistently coming to the public table. Another person we're also going to give radio for his able participation in this program as a winner is Elder Gabriel. He has been very, very active in this program. These are the two people that have made exceptional effort to participate in the people. So we have a radio. You can come to our office at Movers Nigeria office in 1 Ogoja Street off Nike Lake Road, and with an identification or with authority given to you by any of your agent to collect your radio. I'm talking about Pat from Imo State and Elder Gabriel. The two of you are our distinguished jurists that have been able to participate, and we thank you so much for your active participation. Distinguished citizens, the court will now rise.